So, welcome back.
You awakened me from an eternity of darkness.
And be sure to give us a follow on Instagram, YouTube, Letterboxd at Watching Out Loud. We have our lives on YouTube every Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're having good yap sessions where we just talk shit on an actor. It just happens. We don't always plan for it. It just kind of happens. So yeah, come join us for a chat.
Sorry, I gotta get
But
comfy. Apologies.
we have to get settled, all settled in.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah. So
true.
this week we are talking about we're talking about some monster fucker series of
Yes.
movies that came out in the last couple of years, starting with the 2024 Nosferatu.
Indeed,
So
indeed.
when did you? What was your first experience
So
watching
I
it?
saw this in theater. I think it came out in like November, and I saw it in December, like around before Christmas.
I think Nosferatu came out on Christmas because we watched
Oh,
it.
maybe you're right. Maybe I saw it
Yeah,
in
that's what.
January 25 then.
Yeah.
I remember I saw it right before I got my new place in Sac, and I was like, it was like a big deal, like going to the movies alone. You know, if you know all the drama in my
Hmm.
life, it was a big deal for me at the time,
Yeah.
and and I really liked it. Like I thought the aesthetic was really nice. I don't think Lily Rose Depp is like a fantastic actress because I know
Yeah.
Anya Taylor-Joy was originally supposed to be Ellen, but there was like scheduling conflicts, and I really think Anya would have ate this role. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but I thought overall the aesthetic was really cool. It's a pretty long movie, but it felt like fast in theater.
Hmm.
And then when I rewatched it, I was like, "Damn, this shit kind of boring, dog." Like, I don't know,
Didn't
maybe.
it hit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we could talk more about it like later. But like the shadowy effect that they do, especially with his hand over the city, is like visually just so like such a cool effect and like really kind of I don't know how else to describe it other than just like dope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think yeah, awe-inspiring, I think was pretty, like, it just kind of is like, that's fucking sick. Like, it
Yeah.
just leaves you like, that's sick.
What about for you?
Yeah, I saw it for the first time in theaters on Christmas, the opening night. It was our first Christmas away from family and everyone. And so I think we are kind of wanting to make it a tradition to go see a movie on Christmas because that was fun, and it was fun to do like a old school kind of horror film for
Mm-hmm.
that. I really loved it when I first watched it in theaters. Again, just kind of like a lot of the like, uh, I guess the film term mise en scene with like how it was everything was situated in the frame was just really like kind of breathtaking.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember like the in theaters when they do like the shot of like the wide shot of the landscape and then the character is just like super small in the center, low frame. It just like literally looks like they're there like in the theater. So that was just really fucking cool. But when I rewatched it for recording, because I remember I think you had said you'd rewatched it before me and you said that you didn't really like it as much as the first time, but rewatching it, I was like, I still fucking love this movie. I was like, this is a very like up my alley kind of movie. Just felt like a everything was like made for me to enjoy. It was like how I felt. So
I mean,
still a big fan.
there's something about Robert Eggers that like he never misses on aesthetics. Like there's
Yeah.
undeniable, like especially when I think of the scene where her and her friend are like walking on the beach and there's like those graves and stuff. Like that aesthetic is so fantastic. Like he really I don't know, he really
Hmm.
knows how to make like even if there's not a lot of like color, like in Lighthouse for
Yeah.
example, like he knows how to capture the scene. I think the theater experience definitely made it feel more immersive for me.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think watching it a second time, it just kind of felt like, especially the first hour, was very slow. Like, and I know it was kind of like the build up, but it was just kind of like, all right, we get it. Like, he's eating
Hmm.
Thomas. Like, Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Checking the boxes. Yeah.
Like, I felt like that first hour could have been a little bit shorter. I don't
It was
know.
a lot of, yeah, and a lot of travel
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and the buildup of Orlok and Thomas. I think it's very interesting because I I was watching it, and so I think the scene that stood out to me the most this time around was the when Orlok finally drank Thomas's blood,
Mm-hmm.
and he had him like on the floor and was like basically humping him. Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
like, I was so watching it super late, and George was already asleep, so I was watching it downstairs, like had my headphones like hooked up to the Roku. So I forgot when that scene started that I had been silent in the room for so long because there's a sleeping person in the
Mm-hmm.
house, and that happens, and I just like started to like yell, "That's crazy!"
Yeah, I
And
bet
I
that
so
sounded really gross in your head.
well, yeah, it was just like I mean, I think what it was like kind of what you said about like it being immersive in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. I think that maybe what helped it be immersive at home was listening to it on my
Yeah,
headphones
I was gonna
because it
say
was
that probably
literally like,
helped.
yeah, could not get away from it if I wanted to. um, so yeah, it was. I liked the rewatch. I think it's interesting that just thinking about that scene, the film is so much about sexuality, obviously, and
And that scene was super
that's
horny.
that scene feels like the most sexual scene almost
It
of the
really
whole
does.
movie. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting.
Well, just like a quick nod to the cast. We have Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok, Lily Rose Depp as Ellen Hutter, and then Nicholas Hoult as Thomas Hutter.
Yes.
Just for like reference to who these characters are.
Hmm.
I don't know if we did that in the other ones, but I feel like we should at least acknowledge the actors
Yeah. I
somewhat,
guess we could acknowledge the actors a bit. Yeah.
since they kind of
But
are the
also
whole
had
thing.
yeah, was it Willem Dafoe is the mystic
Yeah, I
doctor,
wasn't sure
and
to
then
include
yeah.
him. I definitely feel like when Willem comes into the film, though, that's like when it really kicks up for me. Like, I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
such a Willem Dafoe like fangirl. I
Hmm.
can't
He's
lie. Like,
great.
he's such a weirdo. Like, I feel like when I think back of Poor Things, um, it's really him that I like about the movie.
Hmm.
Like I don't really like that movie in hindsight, but it's him that I liked so much because he was such a
Yeah.
great character.
Yeah, he has
Um,
really interesting and fun characters, even when they're fucked up characters. They're still really fun.
And I think that is a good point to bring up Willem because he actually has one of the most important quotes in the film, in my opinion.
Hmm.
When he's talking to Ellen and about like basically what's going on, and he kind of says like, I don't have the exact quote. My bad. That was the one I didn't write down. Okay. But it's the one where he's basically like saying like in an ancient culture, she would have been like, she would have been like praised for like her kind of like
Yeah, kind of like a shaman
hedonistic
kind of
stuff.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
and it's not that sex is hedonistic, but in the time of
Hmm.
this film, which is like set in 1830s, it would have been, sex was for
Yeah,
procreation at the time, which is true for when the novel was written, and that's the whole point of the character Dracula, which the reason why it's called Nosferatu is it has to do with like publishing rights. So they didn't get the rights
yeah,
to use the term Dracula, so they changed his name to Nosferatu. And the whole
yeah,
point of Nosferatu is that he's transgressive in sexuality. He's like, um, in vampiric lore, it's true too that it's like seduction, sexuality. Like that's the whole point of vampires, and that's what's so interesting about Orlok is he's not a hot vampire, but he still
yeah,
has these elements of seduction.
yeah.
Bisexuality is very clear, like you kind of said with his scene with Thomas, where he's drinking out of Thomas.
Hmm.
He does that with Ellen at the end of the
Yeah,
film too, and that is the consumption of blood is supposed to kind of be like a an allegory for sex, basically.
yeah, yeah,
And in the novel, he breaks literally the Count. That's his name in the novel. Breaks every Victorian taboo. So he does non-procreative sex. oral sex, which was big no-no. Like I said,
They don't do that.
bisexuality, and there's even incest and sexual abuse towards children in the book. So, like, basically everything anti-Victorian standards, which some of those things I think are good things to not
Yeah, good standards to have. Yeah.
Overall, like, this idea for Victorians especially, and you can see that a lot in Thomas's family friends, where, like, they just keep shitting out babies.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's not a bad thing to have kids, you know, but at the same time, it's like that's what makes Ellen so kind of unique. Is like she does have this deep sexuality, and you even see that. I mean, that's how the film opens, is Ellen basically like dry humping the air, and like letting Orlok in, which is, in my interpretation of that, was basically like like her self-pleasuring.
Yeah.
I know some people really want to harp on the grooming aspect of this film, and I don't. I think you're not understanding that at all.
I think, especially because I think that, like, Orlok is more of a symbol of something rather than, like, an actual being. It's like, I think what it is, especially, like, with what happens at the end, and kind of what Willem Dafoe's character says, which probably should know his name as the character, but we're just going to call him Willem Dafoe.
Whatever. He's Willem Dafoe no matter what.
He's Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe is like, basically says as if it's like this evil being that has kind of come from hell to like, and attaches itself, is basically invited into reality. And so it seems like it's, what it is it's this entity attached, like, is called forth from Ellen and uses this corpse basically to animate itself. But the entity itself is not actually like a physical being as we are. And so to say that it is like a grown man grooming her is like, well, no, it's more like an amorphous concept and energy, more or less, that has been invited in, and then that is kind of then manifested as a being.
Right. I would say the manifestation of repression, like repressing sexuality, especially for women, like even in a modern sense, like, you know, masturbation is kind of always like the concept of masturbation typically revolves around male masturbation, and like that part of self-discovery as a youth, we like rarely see or talk about it. So I do think that's maybe why some people miss the mark with Ellen kind of calling him in as a teenage girl. That's just her experiencing her body like purely for pleasure rather than, you know, like its purpose, which is to reproduce. And that's her and her Thomas's whole relationship is like, they don't have, she just wants to fuck her husband, like that's all she wants to do. She's like desperately trying to get dick down, and Thomas is like, I need to make us money, and she's like, I don't care about money, I don't care about dead flowers,
I want to be dick down.
Begging for some penis.
Exactly. It's like, and I think also it kind of goes in with like many, like several things that are said. Like Ellen asks, does evil come from within us or from beyond? And that's kind of this whole, this idea of is Nosferatu wholly separate from herself? And it's like, not necessarily. Like he is a manifestation of this. What was it? Willem Dafoe's character says at one point that like for her, those lower animal functions dominate. Yeah. And so it's this idea that it's kind of a both and of like this quote unquote evil it does come from within. It also comes from without, in this idea of Nosferatu being an actual evil entity that was invited. But, and then I think that, and she also says to Thomas at one point, keep away from me, I am unclean.
So there's like that guilt.
The guilt and specifically so much shame she has around her desires because of what like her father put on her, what society's putting on her. But what I thought was great is that Thomas in response to that says never. And so he, even after she has that like crazy ass scene where she's like breaking down.
Yeah.
It has like so much saliva.
Well, it's kind of like the drive kind of taking her over.
Exactly. And that's when, and I think it's after that she says, keep away from me, I'm unclean. And he says never. Or no, I think they fuck. And then she says that and he says never. And it's like.
Well, only after she says you can never please me the way he does or whatever.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Exactly. But it's like, it's her showing, basically laying bare the thing that she's so ashamed of, that is this thing that's possessing her. Is the thing that he's like, no, I'm still gonna love you and hold you through all that, is kind of the turning point of the film, I think, for Ellen to like kind of come to terms and peace with herself a bit more.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why she Willem Dafoe's character is Professor Franz. Sorry, I had it written down. I just didn't want to, but it's Professor Franz, and I think that's why she, you know, with all the other doctors that are trying to treat it was really just one, but the other people trying to treat Ellen are just trying to repress her. You know, there's even one point where the doctor says, you know, make sure to tighten up her corset before she sleeps, literally physically tying her down. Basically, I think they are literally, I was going to say they're chloroforming her, because instead of being accepting of a woman having sexual desires, they would rather repress it further and physically do so by restraining her and chloroforming her. And then so that's like kind of where Thomas and Franz are transgressive characters in the time of the film as well, where they don't want to repress Ellen's sexuality inherently. Like, I think Thomas, Thomas is kind of a victim of his time, where he's trying to provide a life for him and his wife, which is what
he's trying to check boxes and stuff.
Which is, you know, understandable. Like, you know, they're newlyweds. Eventually they'll have kids because there weren't really contraceptives at the time. Whereas like Professor Franz makes Ellen feel safe because he's the only person really saying like, you're not a monster, you know, you're just, first of all, he acknowledges her gift of being able to kind of tap into these like more spiritual things. Like she's more susceptible
like
to
astral projecting and stuff too.
And here's the quote. He said, "In heathen times you might have been a great priestess of Isis, yet in the strange and modern world your purpose is of greater worth." So I think the implication of that is like her sexuality has to be repressed in the modern world because women are seen as just baby carriers, whereas like in an ancient culture her sexuality wouldn't be perceived as a bad thing per se. And that's why he's such an important character, because he's kind of the only one that finds an avenue to deal with this rather than repress it, because Orlok has two functions. So he absolutely is sort of goes against Victorian taboos and sexuality, you know, being penetrative by like drinking blood of men, so kind of like implying homosexuality. But he also is kind of like the bad side of sexuality, which is disease. And so
that's a really good point.
Is literally a plague on their town. And the reality is like, especially during Victorian era, syphilis was out of control. Absolutely out of control. And the thing about syphilis is, going untreated, it eats you away. Until you're insane. I don't know if you've ever seen like a syphilitic skull or something like that, but it's crazy. Like you literally have holes in your skull. So I think that's what's so interesting, is kind of like something that the novel does and the movie does, but just maybe not as poignantly, is that they're kind of acknowledging like, yes, repressing sexuality is a bad thing ultimately, because people are gonna have sex, like regardless. But that repression and not accepting that people will have sex for pleasure can also lead to like disease. Because there's nothing to mitigate that. Like, this is why we live in our modern world where we have things like condoms, so you can, and condoms did exist at this time. They were lambskin, but I think probably they were pretty hard to obtain, I'd imagine, because the point of sex was for procreation. So I believe, like, from my knowledge of condoms use of this time period, it would have mostly been sex workers, because they're the only people that really are having sex to not procreate at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all really good points. And I think specifically this idea of like repression leads to so much ignorance, which leads to this possibility of disease and spread. But then we also see that the repression is kind of what leads to, I guess in a way, like Ellen's own madness,
psychological disease too.
Yeah, exactly. So it is very much a twofold thing, and it's so interesting because I think it is like Orlok functions as this disease and this evil side of sexuality in that way, but it also seems like in a way like it just opened it like he at one point provided a space for her to open up and to like give into herself in ways that aren't necessarily inherently wrong, just I guess it would be seen as evil or wrong by the standards of that society. So it's kind of interesting because I just think like I know that a lot of the discourse online after this movie came out was like that people thought that Orlok was hot, and it's like, how do people find Orlok hot? Like not like physically, but like his energy was hot, And I think it's because you clearly don't agree. But it's that idea of like the monster fucker thing is like his whole point is still like seduction. And so I think that it's interesting how the dynamic between Orlok and Ellen isn't necessarily, it's not total fear on her part, it's not total hatred. There is a clear like attraction that she has to him as well. And his seduction of her it doesn't feel totally like evil, it's more that he is willing to go to like evil, he's willing to use evil means to get her and get what he wants from her, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing is that she like made a promise to him, and so ultimately like he's gonna make good of that promise. Because I mean, as you said earlier, like she is the reason why he's even here. I mean that you awakened me from an eternity of darkness. That was her tapping into her sexuality, awakening him and bringing him. And it's kind of like you started this, so you got to kind of finish it thing, which is ultimately how Franz and her determine how to get rid of this plague that is Nosferatu, is basically like her letting him in, and which results in both of their demise ultimately, but it's kind of like succumbing to those desires is what killed her too. Which I just think, I just like a sidebar, but like I just think Victorians like repression of sexuality is so funny because Queen Victoria, which is the whole Victorian era, like what it was named by, was constantly fucking her cousin. They had like a shit ton of kids, and she loved fucking her husband. Yeah. There's like documentation of how much she loved banging the shit out of Prince Albert, which also the whole dick piercing is supposed to be from him too, because he allegedly had one. Yeah, because I guess his like penis was like crooked or something, so he tried to straighten. I don't know, like that's what I read. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, like it's so funny that like there was so much of this harping on like repression, and here meanwhile the lady who's ruling it all, she fucking like crazy, like she hated having kids because she just wanted to bang.
Yeah. But she had like a billion kids.
Well, yeah, because they didn't have like contraceptives. Not really.
Exactly.
So I just think that's funny how much of like the Victorian era is, and it's physical repression as much as it is emotional and sexual repression too, with like corsets and stuff. But it's just I don't know. It's just like an interesting thing that like so much literature at the time is kind of talking about this repression, not just Dracula. And then, it's just like maybe we should just like let people like fuck. It like
But I mean, the thing is that they're gonna
they're
do
gonna
it.
do it.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're gonna do it. Did you ever watch the original Nosferatu? The was it 1920s version?
Gosh, I did like a really long, like I did like in high school, so like a really long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I think is interesting is like that character's not like sexy either, but he's still supposed to have like that vampiric charm, right? Have you've seen it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen it. I watched it shortly before going to watch this one
Oh,
in
okay.
theaters.
So you could speak to this
Uh,
way more.
yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's a silent film, so it's
Hmm.
like how much is really getting communicated through silent films. And I think that the Ellen character had just like so much more of a smaller role in the original one. But definitely the idea, I think it was, I could be wrong because again, silent film, it's a lot of interpretation beyond just these little title cards.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty sure that it's like Orlok saw the picture of Ellen in a locket that Hutter had, and that's how he was like, I need to get this girl kind of thing. I don't remember if it was that Ellen summoned him ahead of time in the original one or not.
I'd
I
imagine
can't
in the
remember.
original one they probably wouldn't have that much like overt
Yeah,
sexuality, just because of, like the
exactly.
time it was made. You know, they're not gonna show like because even like if you watch like old timey porn from that time, it's like
Hmm.
very not. You know,
It's very not.
It's different. They
Yeah.
kind of I mean, they show it in Pearl, like the porn of that time period.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's like naked ladies having a picnic. It's kind of
Yeah, exactly.
it's just different.
I do think I do think that it was like less the Ellen and Orlok relationship wasn't quite as flushed out as like
Mm-hmm.
in the original film. So that's why then like with Egger's interpretation, like Ellen is, you know, the main character as much as
Absolutely,
Orlok and
yeah.
stuff. So it's like it is much more of a story about it's more of a woman's story than it is a vampire story, I would say. Like in a lot of ways. So
Absolutely, and I think too like Ellen. I do think Ellen's a good character in this narrative because she's kind of hitting a lot of like she's very layered in the sense that
mhm.
like she's grappling with this like deep desire, you know, and she does love Thomas. There's no question of that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
she wants to be with Thomas, but it's kind of like this overarching like sexual desire that's kind of challenging that. Because there's
Yeah.
even that one quote where Orlok says to her, "Love is inferior to you. I told you you are not of humankind." So it's kind of like
Mhm.
where that shame again, like Orlok not being an
Yeah.
actual person, but like kind of more like a entity of her shame. Is it's like she
Mhm.
feels so much guilt for having these desires.
Mhm.
That it's like
Yeah.
she sees herself as not even like human, like you know she's this hedonistic fuck monster.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck monster. That's what we meant by monster
Yeah.
fucker series. Well, I think also, um, not just even this desire, but it makes me think of like the shame that I feel like, especially, I mean, obviously back then, but even today, that women are kind of in a lot of ways meant to feel if they've been with other men before they get married or
Oh
something.
yeah, body count
Like, yeah,
mentality.
exactly. Like virgin culture is not as much of a thing in our society. It still is for a lot of people, but not as commonly. But this idea of like, yeah, body count and women having the same desires for sex as men do, you know, is still seen as like shameful in a way. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I think like, I don't think it's uncommon that some women are made to feel like they wish they could take back past partners when they meet someone that they really love.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, it kind of almost feels like that's what Ellen's story is it's like she wishes that she didn't explore her sexuality in that way because now she found Thomas and she really loves him and she wants it with him. But it's this it's kind of like once she accepts that what she did in the past is what she chose to do, and like she just chose to almost to like accept her shame just as he accepted her shame, as Thomas did. That's when it's everything's kind of that's what saves everyone,
Yeah.
is that acceptance of her past, not just like her urges but also of her past.
Which, that's such an interesting way to put it, because it's like, I don't think you'll really ever hear men like grappling like, oh, I shouldn't have had sex with other people before I met you.
Yeah, exactly.
It is
it's
like
seen,
ultimately
it's expected.
It's just, but it's also ultimately just like part of the journey. Like, had those things not occurred, then you ultimately probably wouldn't have met that partner. So exactly, I think that's a really interesting way to put it. Yeah, it's like Ellen, it feels shame for kind of like indulging in her sexuality prior to meeting Thomas, but when when he tells her like he fully accepts her like regardless, that's the only time you actually see them be intimate. Is like,
exactly,
when she like has to be, you know, or when he like lets her know like it's fine, like it's cool, I love you, so it doesn't matter. And exactly. I mean, these things are all very arbitrary because, you know, it just is what it is. Like I don't know, like we're human, and you know, you can also get married at like 16 years old and then not have that work and then have other partners later, you know. It's just like, you don't know, that's just like part of the journey. So for Ellen, but it's for her context, it is like more challenging because it really is like so shameful for women of that time to even be like sensual at all. And like Ellen's desire to repress it, I mean, ultimately ends in killing her friend's children. Obviously, that, I think, you know, she didn't realize, but by the time you know, by the time she's like rejecting Orlok, and he's like, okay, because you're not accepting this, because you're not accepting your fate, like, these people you love, you're out of here.
I'm gonna do what I want.
So it's also kind of, I think, demonstrating like the putting these like kind of oppressive roles onto like women and making them feel shame and guilt for it. You know, I'm not saying it's going to result in their friends dying, but but in a more symbolic way, it's like, it's harmful. It's harmful for women to feel shame for having sexual desires. Like, it is just ultimately harmful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because it has a like a domino effect in a way. Like, obviously it's put to the extreme with her friend's death and everything, but you see that when her friend and the friend's husband are talking about Ellen, the husband is very like, you know, basically like, he's the typical Victorian man that's like this, like, she's batshit, like she's crazy, all this sort of stuff. Exactly. And but his wife still loves Ellen so much, and is wanting to be there for her friend, and does not judge her like at any point, just expresses love to her. And but it is this thing where the wife is almost as seen as like the virgin, like we talked about, like the
she's
Madonna
like the pinnacle
versus, exactly,
Madonna versus the whore, like, totally.
Because she's all like, obviously her and the husband love each other, but they procreate. That's what they do. Like, and so you do see though that this, even though her and Ellen are so contrasted, there is still just this like love and understanding and connection for each other that isn't like again, like Ellen's shame, Ellen's behavior does not make her friend alienate her.
Well, and I think it can almost be argued that you can't like put women into boxes like that. Like, just because Ellen's friend kind of like upholds those Victorian standards doesn't mean she doesn't have desires. It's just she's better at masking it, and whereas like Ellen is the more emotional side, I would say, where she's not as good at hiding it, and she just kind of acts on you know, Ellen's got a lot of whimsy and her friend it
Hmm.
doesn't. You know.
Yeah, like I mean, just them talking on the beach, like Ellen talks like her stream of consciousness is
Mm-hmm.
just like a romantic poem, you know? So it's like I mean, she's the kind of girl that like would be on SSRIs right now, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like
Well, and
whereas the friend just kind of is able to like go about their day without needing SSRIs.
I actually love that quote on the beach. I think we're thinking about the same one where she's like, "Do you ever feel at times you're not a person? What I wish to say is
Yeah.
that you're not truly present nor alive, as if you're at the whim of another, like a dog. Someone or something has power to breathe life into you, to move you." And so she's like, again, it's kind of, and her friend's just kind of like, what are you talking about?
She's like,
But,
"Oh, you're so silly."
but
Like
again, it's like with the backstory context we know about Ellen and kind of like indulging in her sexuality a bit at a young age,
hmm.
it's almost like Ellen has this like awakening that maybe her friend hasn't gotten to experience because she more than likely just kind of did traditional Victorian girl things, which is like probably
Yeah.
even self pleasure and just like immediately got married and immediately got pregnant when she started having sex. So
Yeah.
um it's I think they're a good like duality because you know, ultimately like every girl has these both elements to them. It's just
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
seeing it very like foundationally extremely different in these two characters.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
ultimately, Ellen does just want to be that kind of wife for Thomas. Like, she just wants to be a good, loving wife for Thomas, but it's just like ultimately her desires, her indulging in her desires is what's going to save everyone. So she's really a heroine in the sense that, like,
Yeah.
accepting herself for who she is saves everyone because
Hmm.
by letting Nosferatu in to drain her, and then holding him in until, you know, the
Yeah, yeah.
rooster starts doing its rooster thing, which they actually do that all hours of the day, for the record, if you ever want
Yeah,
chickens.
it's not just when the sun comes up.
No, but that is what ultimately kills Orlok and saves everyone, is her just like
Hmm.
accepting who she is. And
Yeah.
I hate his little chicken legs. Speaking of chickens, I hate his gross little legs. Let's. I feel like
Well,
we'd
yeah.
be amiss to not talk about that scene because that is like the most important scene, and I think a lot of people don't
Oh, yeah.
totally get that scene. Like almost every, because I was gonna bring up like an analysis of the film, but I feel like I understand it well enough that I don't need to. But that
Hmm.
scene, the ending, really a lot of people seem to struggle with.
Really, I didn't really read. I love that ending scene, that last shot so much. I think it's one of my favorite like last shots of any film I've seen.
Yeah.
What have you read that you don't think people
Just
are
like
getting?
everything, like every analysis for Nosferatu is people being like, "What's the ending mean?" And I
Yeah.
just think that's interesting because I'm like, how, like out of everything in the movie, like that's what you weren't grasping. It's like either people,
Yeah.
I think it's because I think if you're sticking to the narrative that like Nosferatu like groomed Ellen as a little girl or
Mm.
something, like I think the problem is people are watching it very linearly, like that he is real and he's
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
a figure of Victorian taboos. Like he's an entity that
Yeah.
is kind of just like exists. It's
Yeah.
not like a person, you know, banging a
Yeah.
teenage girl against her will,
Hmm.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know?
yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
so I think
Well,
that's
and
the problem.
yeah, I mean, I think watching that last scene, and especially like because then they lay flowers around them.
Mm-hmm.
It to me, I'm like, this is her finally at peace and like laying with her shame. And
Yes.
even though it's like this grotesque body, it's made beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think, and then also what's interesting is that when Orlok, you know, burns up or whatever, shrivels up, it's not necessarily actually like the sun frying him. It's the sunlight removes this like entity from the
It's like
body, and now the
cleansing.
body, yeah, and now the body returns in, like turns into what it actually is, which is just a rotting corpse. So
Yes.
that's why it's all shriveled up and small. Like and then, but I think that idea that you just said of like the sunlight is cleansing is something that is said is like you need to like put the truth like bring the truth out into the light for you to be able to like actually address things and like uh like you can't hide things, otherwise it's just going to continue to fester and get worse, which is like this whole idea of like this repression that Ellen is having is the thing that's basically causing so much of these problems is that repression.
Exactly.
And so then finally literally bringing it out into the light is the thing that solves everything and brings peace and restoration to it all.
Well, and by further repressing it like the other doctor was just making matters worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally when it's like, no, we accept it and this is what we have to do, you know, to deal with it, the way that Franz and Ellen determined how to solve this issue. It's just, it is a very beautiful scene, and it is like, I mean, it's gross seeing him like all like, but and I also think about that scene where Thomas gives Ellen flowers the first time versus when she's passed and the flowers are like around her body. You know, it's kind of, her whole thing is like, these things are dying and they're going to be dead. Why would you kill these beautiful flowers to do this? And it's kind of like a rebirth almost at the end, I feel like.
Yeah. It's a release through death, but then also a rebirth in like just the way that it's almost like the way that society is going to be for these characters now, like having gone through this, like they are changed, their experiences are changed.
Yeah, she's like a martyr too for them, you know. It's like she ultimately sacrifices herself so that there's no more harm, you know, that comes to this town. Because, I mean, like, there was plague rats. Like, it was not going to be a good time for anyone.
It was going to be a real bad time.
Yeah.
But I think also, though, when you were bringing up, like, the other doctor, obviously, like, a very prevalent theme in this movie was, like, Western perspectives and science versus like old world lore, which we kind of touched on in Sinners, like this idea of like, you know, white Christian perspective versus like native lore, you know, hoodoo lore, Celtic lore. And so like we see that throughout this film too, specifically like at the beginning when Thomas is in the Romani village, and it's like all of their lore, they're trying to tell him like basically like don't go to the castle,
like not good times.
Like, and he's just like, I gotta, these crazy Romani just keep dancing
running
and singing
around
their
naked
songs
on their horses.
And so, which that scene, watching it a second time was so like Hawthorne's Young Goodman Brown, that short story. Where he's witnessing like a heathen ritual in the woods. And I remember in the short story, that's kind of what breaks Young Goodman Brown's like belief in like Christianity and God and all that. And but it seems like in this film, it's like that scene is, for Hutter, like, it's so bizarre that he, like, just has to assume that it is a dream.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it could be, but at the same time, it's also, like... What?
I don't think it was, though. I think
no,
it was
I don't
really
think
happening.
So.
He just was... He was trying to abide so much by the standards of his time and that he's used to, that he has to actually reject it and make it a dream.
Exactly.
Like, as soon as Thomas is in Orlok's castle... It's like he's terrified. This man is trembling. But he's going against his better instinct in nature that this is bad and I should leave, and forcing himself to power through it. Yeah, because now we have this other thing of like repression and denial. He is denying so hard that this is actually happening. Yeah. And just keeps moving forward, and that's what leads to all of these problems. He knows Orlok's feeding off of him. He sees the bites, but he still doesn't do anything. Yeah. It's dumb little baby. It's crazy. But I think that we should have talked about this earlier too with all this, but I think the main focus is Ellen. But I do think Thomas's like ultimate rejection is kind of such a man of his time, period. Is like rejecting anything that you don't understand, just simply reject it. It doesn't exist. You know, it's almost like this mentality of like, if I'm not acknowledging it, it's not actually happening. And it's like,
Exactly. Yeah.
no,
It's
no, dude.
it's that idea of like to speak it makes it real. Like
Yeah.
to talk about it gives it life. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it exists whether you talk about it or not. And usually it's not until you like bring it out and like talk about it that you're able to actually address it and deal with it.
And that first time he finally does kind of acknowledge, like, okay, yes, this something is happening. This dude's feeding
Mm-hmm.
off me. Like, there's literal teeth marks on me, and tries to do
Yeah.
something about it, which is like ultimately kill Orlok. That is the first time we actually see Orlok feed. Is like when Thomas
Yeah.
tries to confront him. So it's like actually dealing with it is when we make some progress with what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, we can make sense of it.
Because the plan was that Orlok was just going to drain him and then go get Ellen. That was the plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we find out because of his whole boss ended up being like Orlok's little bitch boy.
But that was crazy.
I kind of like forget about that whole like. I know I just
that's
rewatched
what we're in denial of.
Yeah,
is that guy's existence.
Because I don't like the scene where he's like, oh, like
Yeah, with like the pigeon and
Yeah,
stuff.
his
Yeah,
poor pigeon.
it's that guy's rough. We don't need to talk too much about him.
Hate him.
But yeah,
That's the verdict.
hate him. Like his death was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like you had like these varying degrees of like Western men of science,
Mm-hmm.
and so like you have like Thomas's friend, the husband of Ellen's friend, that was
Friedrich.
like Friedrich, that was so in denial of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he to the end it was like he had to kill himself rather than accept the reality of what was actually happening.
That was coping for him.
Yeah, exactly. And then you had the other doctor played by, was it Ralph Ineson? He's another
White guy.
Yeah, Ralph Ineson, who is like another Robert Eggers darling.
Mm-hmm. He's the dad, right, in The Witch?
In The Witch, yeah. And so he's like, you know, a doctor, man of science, but he is willing to be open to something else. And then you have Willem Dafoe's character that is like the mystic, basically, that is able to marry the two, marry science and this spirituality. And so that it's because he lives in this liminal space. He's able to make room for Ellen in that liminal space, to where she's able to like, you know, accept everything, accept who she is, and this problem is able to be resolved. But it is that like absolute like black and white of like, it's, you know, all mysticism, all spirituality versus no, it's all has to be proved by science. Is where like no one can actually fully live and exist, because that's not the reality of the situation. It has to be both.
Yep. That's a really good point. Well, I think
That's Nosferatu.
Yeah, I think on that note, that's Nosferatu.
And that's Nosferatu. Anything else you want to say? Nosferatu's dick was crazy.
I know, I remember, I think that was the first thing I asked you. I was like, do you see vampire dick? And you're like, yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I was
Because
like, yeah, you don't want to.
I think there was like an implication that it was Nicholas Hoult you were going to see naked. Like, I feel like that was kind of like the online lore. And then it turned out it was Orlok, and it was like, oh.
And it was crazy.
It's just like gross and gray. Like, it looks like a
was
weird German sausage that you wouldn't want to eat.
It was a bad time. I think that it went viral because, like, what was it? Bill Skarsgård gave Nicholas Hoult as a gift.
Oh, that's right. The prosthetic
frame. So good. But yeah, we love the Skarsgård boys. Bill Skarsgård is my Skarsgård. Alexander is your Skarsgård.
Yeah, Alexander Skarsgård's my Skarsgård,
our,
who was
our
also a
Skarsgård
vampire.
darlings, who's also a better kind of vampire.
Yeah,
but I think
not the weird, gross, rotting kind.
Yeah, but I think I remember reading that like Bill Skarsgård developed Nosferatu's voice by like studying like ancient like dead languages, basically.
Oh, really?
And tried to like recreate dead languages for his accent.
Interesting.
So he did like his character work that he does for these characters to bring them to life is just so incredible.
I loved that meme that was going around that was like Orlok going like, "You must bounce on it."
Yeah, you must bounce on it, crazy style.
Yeah, I did learn too that it's actually Nosferatu, where the lore came in that they're like that the sun can kill them. I guess in the original lore, which is like Dracula and Twilight, is that they're just impacted by the sun, but it doesn't actually like harm them. It just makes them glitter. So it is kind of interesting how the films changes the vampiric lore, which vampire lore has existed in several ancient cultures for a really, really long time. So we see I think that's just an interesting nod to like the way media will change like folklore and like kind of adapt it.
I think that it really seemed like the original Nosferatu was like, the director was like, I really want to do a Dracula story, but I just kind of want to like do whatever I want with it. It was kind of like my like Twilight remakes that I wrote when I was 12. So I was like, this is how I think this is how I think it should have gone. Like, that's what the original Nosferatu was.
Well.
So, yep. But that's Nosferatu. We wrapped it up. And until next time, if you are not to award me love, then I will indulge in my rage, and mine is infinite.
Bye.